lama lah pula recording. Okay. Alright, industrial building allowance. So why do we have this industrial building allowance? Is because when a company, alright, you may have, most of the company have plant and machinery. Alright, but some other companies also have an asset we call building. Alright, so when you have building, it's a capital asset. It's a fixed asset. Alright, you incur capital expenditure. When you have a building, it means that you could either purchase a building or you can construct a building, right? So the law says that in order to allow companies to claim, because it's a capital expenditure incurred, so we give you deduction, all right, on the capital expenditure in the form of industrial building allowance. So it's the same. So it means that when you do your computation, once you have your adjusted income, then you minus your capital allowance on plant and machinery. So just like we did just now. And then if you have a building, you have another portion where you have your CA for your industrial building. Then only you combine all the CA, compute your statutory income. All right. So you may have your plant and machinery. You also can have your industrial building. Okay. So the industrial building similar computation is that you have to determine your qualifying expenditure. What is your IA? What is your AA? All right. And then compute your upon disposal can be a residual expenditure for all these things. It's the same. Yeah, it's just the additional allowances given for companies if you have an industrial building. Okay. The name is industrial building. So it means that it's not all buildings. The building must be an industrial building in order for you to claim allowances. Yeah. So what is industrial building? So that is the definition that you must know, because not all buildings are entitled for industrial building allowance. Only industrial building. So definition must be correct. Number two is that, of course, the computation is the same. IA, in this case, the IA is 10%, but the annual allowance is 3%. Why? Because normally building, the lifespan of a building is longer. All right, for plant machinery, normally it's 4 years, 5 years, right? Maximum, katalah office equipment, take longer period, right? But for building, it's longer. All right, so that's why it takes maybe 10, 20, 30 years a building. You can have a 100 years building still in operation. Yeah, so that's why your initial allowance is only 10% and right now it's 3%, because it takes longer for the asset to be fully depreciated or fully claimed. Yeah, so that is the IA and AA. But of course, we do have specialized, we do have accelerated rate for building. All right, so that depends on the laws lah. You have to be aware of that also. Okay. Number three is that is it number three? I don't know. Okay, the qualifying expenditure. All right, because if it's a plant machinery, it's very straightforward for you to determine what is the QE. Okay, how much you incur the cost, that will be your QE. All right, more complicated if you have higher purchase. All right, you have to compute QE a bit more challenging. All right. But for a building, all right, if you purchase a building, it's very straightforward. Okay, based on the purchase price, that could be a qualifying expenditure. But if you were to construct a building, all right, it's not that straightforward. If you want to construct a building, first you have to buy a land. You buy a land. In order for you to buy a land, you have to incur legal fees, all the stamp duty, all that, anything to do with the land. Once you have all the land, then only you can construct a building on the land. All right. So what we are giving, the allowance is on the building, not on the land. Because land does not depreciate. Land appreciate in value. But building depreciate in value. That's why we give allowance on the building. So allowance ni, kalau you put that into an accounting term, it's a depreciation. Right. So that's why we give depreciation on the building, because the building depreciate in value. But land always appreciate in value. So that's why there's no depreciation on land. There's no allowances given on land. So you have to take be careful, because the cost of the land, anything to do with the land, are not qualifying expenditure for the purpose of industrial building. So once you construct a building, then you have so many costs incurred. The construction cost, the legal fees, architect fee, the wiring, the plumbing, the long list of costs. Yeah, so you have to decide of all these costs, which one is the qualifying expenditure for the building, right? Because you will also see later part of the qualifying expenditure, part of the cost incurred for the building could also be plant and machinery. Right? So that's the challenges when you do industrial building allowance. The competition is simple, right? Just IA, 10 and 3%. But for you to come out the qualifying expenditure, that's the trick, right? Because you really have to know what is the qualifying expenditure for the purpose of industrial building, right? Once your QE is wrong, your IA and AA are also wrong. Betul tak? So make sure your QE is correct. And in order for you to compute your QE, you must know what is an industrial building. What is the definition of industrial building? All right, so let's look into your textbook in chapter 19. Right, industrial building in chapter 19 of your textbook. I think that the page number may not be the same because I'm using the 2019 edition. Okay, banyak nota-nota nak I pakai, okay? Don't play, okay? Alright, so what is a qualifying building expenditure? Remember this one is industrial building, right? QBE, qualifying building expenditure, right? Is a capital expenditure incurred on the construction or purchase of a building which is used at any time of its construction or purchase, as the case may be, as an industrial building. So it means that you can purchase a building, but if the building is not an industrial building, you are not eligible to claim IBA, right? But the formula, for example, the criteria must be a business, you must have a business income, you must incur the expenditure, all right, and then the asset must be used in the business, is still applicable. But for an industrial building, it must be used for industrial purpose. Yeah, all right, and then you can claim IBA, and then you have the Public Ruling 8/2016, Public Ruling 10/2016 as well on industrial building. All right, I like to refer to Public Ruling because it's very clear. They give you examples, all right, they give you different scenario and how to do computation. So I like to refer to Public Ruling, and I hope that you can also refer to Public Ruling whenever it comes across throughout our semester, right? So take note of that Public Ruling 8/2016 and Public Ruling 10/2016 governing the industrial buildings. Okay, now we have to go into the definition. Why is an industrial building? Because only if the building is an industrial building, then you can claim capital or building allowance, IBA, right? Industrial building includes, it means that there are a lot more, which is not, yeah? So a factory, so means that factory is something that manufacture, yeah? A dock, wharf, jetty, or other similar building. Why is this related? You are the factory, why you have a dock, all right? For example, here you're talking about, later you see that if you have a warehouse, right? Nearby a port. A port is where a place where you normally import and export, all right? Transfer goods, all right, to be exported or to be imported or to be transferred from one place to another. So you put your finished goods, all right, in the port, right, in a warehouse, and you may own a warehouse. So because of that, you can claim industrial building on the warehouse. But if from the warehouse, you also have a structure or the jetty or what do you call that? A wharf or a dock that belongs to you, or that you do have to incur expenses on that capex, that is also part of your industrial building. Yeah. And then you can have a warehouse let out to the public. You can own a warehouse and you let out to the public. You can claim industrial building allowance on that warehouse. Building used in the utility business, such as supplying water or electricity, yeah, or telecommunication services. So if you see that the telecom punya structure, right, the communication structure, or you have the water tank or the TMB punya structure, whatever, these are industrial building as well. It doesn't have to be a building, but the structure itself could be, right, is actually an industrial building. Building used in the working of a mine or farm, so it doesn't have to be manufactured, right? If you're farming or mining, you can also claim that building, right, for industrial building allowance. Or any mill workshop in connection with the working of mine. So that is included under the definition of factory. Okay. And then it further says that a factory is defined as a building consisting of a mill, a workshop, or other building for the housing of machine. So it means that for the housing of machine, the storing of machine or plant used in the manufacture of any product or the subject of goods or material to any process. A building used incidental to the manufacturing business. So if you have a manufacturing business, so you have a building, so that building is incidental to the manufacturing, right? For example, you can have a building that you store all your machine, and that machine is used for the purpose of the manufacturing. So that building is an industrial building. However, all right, it says here that a workshop used for the repair or service of goods, which is carried out in conjunction with or incidental to the business of selling those goods, is not considered as a workshop for the purpose of industrial building allowance. So for example, here it says that if you have, if your business is selling of motor vehicle, all right, and on top of selling motor vehicle, you also provide service of motor vehicle. So you have a workshop or a garage, workshop lah, all right, workshop, is it? For repair of your motor vehicle. So in this case, even the workshop is a building, but that workshop is not industrial building because why? The business is selling motor vehicle, not producing motor vehicle. You see that? So that workshop that you provide services is not an industrial building. Therefore, you cannot claim initial IBA, industrial building allowance. Okay, that is number one. Number 3 says that a building within the same curtilage of as a building which is used as a factory. So you see that normally you have one big factory, right? But then you also have seen other buildings within the same curtilage. Curtilage means that within the same area, yeah? So if you have that, all right, for storage of any raw material or to store your fuel, store of necessary for the manufacture of that product, or for the processing of those goods or material, or for the storage of that product or those goods or material when processed prior to the sale of those goods. So if you have a factory and then you have other buildings within the same curtilage, and that is used for storage of anything to do with the processing or to do with the work in progress, to do with the finished goods, all right? So these buildings are also industrial buildings. But the word is that within the same curtilage, right? So it means that whether the same curtilage means that it's attached or adjacent to or within the same enclosure as other building. So if I say that I have this building within the same curtilage, so the whole building is an industrial building. But if I have my storage or my warehouse, or my factory is in PJ, my storage house is in Gombak, right? So this Gombak and PJ is not within the same curtilage, right? If a foreigner, they may not have the idea, right, whether within the same curtilage, as long as within the same enclosure, right? So you have, sometimes they say that, okay, manufacturing at PJ, warehouse in Shah Alam. Is that warehouse is regarded as industrial building? No, because not within the same curtilage. Yeah. Okay. Okay, and another thing is that you say that a warehouse of a retail shop. So you can have a retail shop and then you have another building that keep all the goods, the inventories, right? It's for storage purpose. But can you regard that business or that building as an industrial building? No. Why? Because the building is used to store finished goods for selling. So the business is not producing, it's not manufacturing. The business is selling of goods, right? It's a retail shop. So kalau selling of goods, then you cannot claim lah, yeah, because it's not factory. Okay, so a warehouse of a retail shop would not qualify since the retailer does not manufacture goods. Okay. So what's the time now? 11:17. I think that I will stop here because the following said that there are circumstances where buildings are to be treated as industrial buildings. So you see that later, right? There are other buildings which is not factory, but is regarded as a industrial building, right? For example, building used for staff welfare. Now you see that living accommodation, you have school, even your institution, your university, childcare facilities, hospital, research building. So all these are industrial building. So the first part is that it's factory. But then second time is, there are other buildings which also not industrial building, not factory, but it's regarded as industrial building. So that's why you have to understand really the definition of industrial building first. Then, okay, you decide, is this industrial building or not? If yes, then what is the IA, what is the AA? Right, because some of the building, all right, even though we say that generally it's 10 and 3%, all right, there are a few which give you a different rate, right? So you have to take note of the rate, the initial rate, and the annual allowance. Okay. I will stop here and then we'll continue on the definition or the circumstances of the buildings which are regarded as industrial building in the next class. So I think that's all for today. If you have any question, you can ask me now before we end the class. Yes. Aida nak tanya ke?
No.
Okay. So I think that's all for today.